Wow, slow news day, eh? Oh yeah, not really, not at all. So, not really surprising, Helio Castroneves has signed for the full season in 2022 with Meyer-Shank Racing. He'll drive his now, I guess, traditional 06 car in which he won his fourth Indianapolis 500. But what was shocking about today's announcement from Meyer-Shank Racing is that the 60 car, the first car in the team, the seat is now vacant as Jack Harvey has left for greener pastures. So we have three major things to discuss in this video. Number one, Helio returning to Shank and full time. Number two, where the heck is Jack Harvey going? And number three, who the heck is going to get one of the most coveted seats in IndyCar racing, joining the defending Indy 500 winners, and a team that certainly seems like it is on a massive upward trajectory. So, let's read the press release from Meyer-Shank Racing, because this will give us some insight and some ground to stand on as we kind of speculate about what's about to happen. So, July 22nd of 2021, in Ohio. I can't say that name, but don't expect me to say that. Today, Meyer-Shank Racing, MSR, announced that Helio Castroneves will return for a full NTT IndyCar Series season in 2022 and will attempt to become the first five-time winner of the Indianapolis 500 in the sport's history, as he is set to pilot the number 06 AutoNation SiriusXM Honda. Drive for 5 is the theme for 2022 as MSR, AutoNation, and SiriusXM go into the record books. I am thrilled to get the chance to go for a fifth Indianapolis 500 win, and I'm so excited to fight for the IndyCar Championship again with a full season of races next year with Meyer-Shank Racing, says Castroneves. Mike and Jim have established some incredible sponsorships with AutoNation and SiriusXM, and having that support is critical. I have been missing racing in IndyCar full-time so much, I can't wait to get a head start on next year with some strong races to finish the season. I should have done the Helio impression. I can't believe I didn't do that. Oh well. Tripoli! There we go. It didn't take too long for MSR and Castroneves to show their synergy with the Brazilian, as the Brazilian went on to win the 105th running of the Indianapolis 500. The victory was historical on many levels. The first race where fans were back at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Castroneves record-setting fourth Indianapolis 500 victory, and the first ever IndyCar Series win for MSR. Meyer-Shank Racing continues to deliver on its plan for success. MSR went from a one-off Indianapolis 500 outing to an Indianapolis 500 winning team, and now in their fifth year, the IndyCar team will continue to plan with 2 full season entries starting in 2022. MSR also announced that the number 60 AutoNation SiriusXM Honda, which had been driven by Jack Harvey for the past few seasons, has been renewed for 2 years with a new pilot. All right, so they've already signed the new driver. The team is excited to continue its relationship with longtime sponsors AutoNation and SiriusXM, and a welcome, dynamic new driver who will be announced soon. We wish Jack as much success, and we will know he will continue to be a driver to watch, says MSR co-owner Mike Shank. MSR is excited to have Helio on the 06 car next season, and we're looking forward to adding a driver who will turn heads in the 60 car. The expansion of the team would not be possible without SiriusXM and how many times can I say AutoNation and SiriusXM? Since their first outing in the 2017 Indianapolis 500. In addition, Liberty Media's minority investment in Meyer-Shank Racing, which is attributed to the Formula One Group in 2020, showed the great potential that the team has for future motorsport endeavors. In just 42 IndyCar Series races, MSR has collected an Indy 500 victory, 2 podiums, 2 front row starts, 12 top 10 finishes, in addition to the team's on-track accomplishments. MSR is also in the final stages of building a brand new 43,000 square foot shop in Pascagoula, Ohio. Okay, I finally said it. There are so many people around us who have given the opportunity to expand to 2 full season entries next year, says Mike Shank. My partner Jim Meyer and I have done this in a way that makes sense for us. I'm very excited to have Helio on board for the 2022 season. I think there will be a lot of excitement around our second driver when we make that announcement as well. Okay, number one thing. Again, not much of a surprise Helio Castroneves is coming on for the full season. As soon as he won that Indy 500, I I think I even said it at the time. Helio pretty much had complete reign over what he was going to be able to ask Meyer-Shank Racing to continue driving for them. And Helio has always wanted to come back and run full season IndyCar racing. Really, it was kind of a Penske decision to take him out and run him in IMSA and not full-time in IndyCar. That wasn't an Helio decision. In fact, Helio almost left Penske when that was kind of, if you remember, kind of the end of 2017. I think he looked at Schmidt, believe it or not. So I'm excited to see Helio back. Do I think he's necessarily going to run for a championship or be a contender? Probably not. But then again, I look at some of his pace, especially on the road courses in IMSA, and I think if Shank can kind of produce the same kind of magic that they did for the Indy 500, I don't see any reason that Helio can't be competitive still. But I think it's going to be very difficult with so many hungry young lions across the bulk of the season for Helio to actually compete realistically for a championship. Now, a fifth Indianapolis 500 win, I think that's much more realistic. I think the continuity, the confidence, I think all of those factors going into next year's Indy 500, well, boy, we could have a record set, and Meyer-Shank Racing setting that record. So, the second point is Jack Harvey. So originally, the way things seemed to be worded, I think a lot of people, myself included, jumped to the conclusion that Jack Harvey had been let go from Meyer-Shank Racing. This is not the case. Jack Harvey left upon his own accord. He left the team that brought him into IndyCar racing, and a team in which that I understood that they had a very solid relationship. So why would Jack Harvey leave? Well, it meant that probably he has a much better offer somewhere else. And that's where the head scratcher comes in, because yes, I do think Jack Harvey, because that was the thing I was disappointed about when I first heard this news. It's like, man, Jack Harvey, while he hasn't won a race yet, and certainly Helio going out and winning immediately the Indy 500 first race with the team, I think probably would have soured other owners other than Michael Shank. I felt like there's been a lot of positions where Jack Harvey has done everything right, and kind of the cartoon anvil has fallen on top of him, and he hasn't been able to execute through no fault of his own. So I've kind of felt like a lot of people have, that his first win is coming. And so seeing him leave Meyer-Shank is just a very, very interesting prospect. Because he's got to be getting paid somewhere. Someone has come along and said, Jack Harvey, here, we're going to back up the Brinks truck, and we are going to pay you to drive for us. So who could that possibly be? I think there's two realistic options that would be interested in Jack Harvey. Number one is Andretti Autosport. We know they are looking to do a shakeup next year. That could include both Ryan Hunter-Reay and James Hinchcliffe on the outs, so potentially you have two seats open there. Now, my personal belief has been that at the very least you're going to see Kyle Kirkwood there and possibly Devlin DeFrancesco. It's kind of going to depend on where who brings the most money to the 29 car, whether that's James Hinchcliffe or whether it's Devlin. But I could see potentially if, say, DHL re-ups, you could put Kirkwood in the 29 car with potentially, if he wins the Lights Championship, you've got $1 million to play with there. You could potentially fully fund that car with Kirkwood, and then maybe put Harvey in the DHL car. I could see that because, of course, Harvey does have a little bit of experience with Andretti. He obviously has experience with Andretti Technologies because that's who's partnered with Meyer-Shank Racing. So I could see Andretti, and that was actually my first thought. But as I've been thinking about it, and as I've been talking to a few people in the industry, I begin to realize that the more logical option, perhaps, than Andretti would be Arrow McLaren SP. Let me explain why. Well, number one, the Brinks truck. Arrow McLaren SP tends to pay their drivers. And when they want to go get somebody, typically they get them. So, unless your name is Simon Pagenaud. As long as you're not signed for Roger Penske, Arrow McLaren SP is probably going to get you. I think the logic in Harvey going to Arrow McLaren SP is this. Number one, they've been looking to expand to a third car for a while now. If they found the funding to do that, I would imagine that maybe Harvey would be choice number one, perhaps, which is a little bit surprising. But you could also see him in the 7 car, because there has been a little bit of talk that maybe Rosenquist is on the outs with that team, kind of similar to what we've seen the last couple of years where there's been a lot of turnover. But I think one thing that's logical about Harvey and Schmidt is that when Meyer-Shank was partnered with Schmidt, and oftentimes they were not a full-time team when they were partnered with Schmidt, Harvey would outdo the team cars at Schmidt. So it was Marcus Ericsson or James Hinchcliffe. A lot of times Harvey would be the top qualifier of the 3 drivers and not exactly be a full-time entry. So I wonder if members of that team perhaps said, look, this guy can drive our setups, this guy is fast. If we get him into our team, it'll raise our profile and potentially get him away from the competition. So that's what I'm thinking right now. I'm thinking if Harvey's going someplace, I keep wanting to say Meyer-Shank Racing. He's not going to Meyer-Shank Racing. He's going to Arrow McLaren SP. That's my opinion. Now, more opinions. The 60 car. So they already have a driver signed. That's interesting to me. So it makes me lean away from a potential like a Simon Pagenaud or even like a Romain Grosjean. Because I think, number one, I don't think Michael Shank, especially with Castroneves already in for the full season, I think you've got the experience side of things covered. So you're not going to want to go old. You're not going to want to go out and sign Tony Kanaan or Ryan Hunter-Reay for the full season. I think if you did a 3rd car, those would be great options. But even a Simon Pagenaud, I think, doesn't have the development potential that maybe a younger driver would. So who could you go get? Well, you could get Kevin Magnussen. We know he's looking pretty hard at an IndyCar drive. Yes, there's the Peugeot contract that's in the way, but apparently Kevin Magnussen was very adamant to Chip Ganassi, like, I want you to add a car for me. I want to run IndyCar full time. I think that Indy Lights drivers, for sure. I think Kyle Kirkwood is another one. If for some reason Andretti fills 2 seats, and Kirkwood's kind of on the outs, or on the outside looking in. Potentially Michael could farm him over to Shank. I would also think that an Oliver Askew would be very much someone that would fit the Meyer-Shank Racing bill. Young driver, has in the past, he had some potential. There were some talks, I think, last season between Askew and Shank. So they've looked at him before. He's a driver you could potentially build with. He's a driver that doesn't have a whole lot of money, but the good thing about the 60 car, as stated in the press release, is that it's fully funded. So Shank can just go out and get whoever he wants, essentially, because you can just pay the driver and get him in there, and the race car is ready to go, and there's no real additional funding needed. And certainly that's an advantage of winning the Indy 500 too, is essentially the sponsors are going to bend over backwards to do whatever you want, because you're clearly capable of running the team, as the Meyer-Shank Racing team has certainly shown. So I would lean toward an Askew or a Kirkwood. Maybe you could see like a Dave Malukas, but yeah, because I think Malukas is from Ohio, right? Yeah, that would be an interesting one. I saw some people say Alexander Albon. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like if you're going to see someone with an F1 pedigree, it would be Magnussen, because I think he would probably perform a little bit better earlier on, especially now that he has that experience. But again, I think you will maybe see a driver with Andretti ties, even if it's not. Obviously, I think Meyer-Shank Racing at this point is definitely their own entity, but they do have that connection with the dampers with Andretti. So if you can find a driver who knows how to drive those setups right out the bat, and if it's a younger driver who can drive those setups right off the bat, I think you're really in a good position. So that kind of narrows things down quite a bit, because there aren't as many young drivers who Michael doesn't have already signed, into their program that has experience testing or racing with their cars. I don't know. This is thrown a huge monkey wrench into IndyCar silly season. Because now you look at it, and Penske does have a fourth car that you'd presume that Simon Pagenaud will sign with, but that's not confirmed yet. Ganassi looks like they may be expanding again with the NASCAR sale, so they have money to play with. You now have the 60 car from Meyer-Shank up for grabs. Well, it's not up for grabs anymore, but there's going to be a different driver in that car. And then Andretti has as many as 2 seats potentially for the full season that are going to be available. So this is wild. There's a lot of potentially race-winning, championship-winning, Indy 500 winning seats up for grabs. And whoever gets those seats may make some serious marks on the calendar next year in IndyCar. So, exciting day. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport and IndyCar content, and I'll see you in the next video.